Hi everybody. Round 2 for Series 2 plugins. There are 3 new plugins and there are also improvements for 2 of the 3 existing plugins. So let's first get to that, then to the new plugins, and then I'll tell you a bit about a feature that is requested and why I won't do it and why it belongs to my plugins concept. So first improvement is in the blue compressor. The scope view here is now in a logarithmic scale, and it was in a linear scale, so it was hard to read and hard to adjust the threshold thingy here. So now it is in a logarithmic scale, which makes it more easy. Let's see that.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand, but it's running through my fingers.
Again with a new setting.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand, but...
So here, for example, you can see it's easier to set the threshold. The only bug in the new series plugins that was found by Zeno, thank you for that, was that in the TCP or MCP mode for the orange EQ, you couldn't drag the, well, which one was it? The low shelf. That was only possible at smaller sizes, and now it is possible at any size. And this whole graphics thing was a bit strange before, so I fixed that. So let's reset this EQ thing here and see one of the new plugins. And this is the Lime de-esser, which is based on the de-esser from the TUKAN bundle before, but it has some new features. So let's listen to that take that we just had, this vocal take, and you hear some sharp S's.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand.
And we can see what's new in this plugin is that we have an analyzer where we can drag the range for the de-essing thing.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand.
And, well, these are the knobs here, key in and key out. And we can key listen so we can find the S's. I think there we go. So now we can lower the threshold to even de-ess more. We can turn that all the way down.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand.
Well, that sounds a bit like a cheap microphone, so let's turn that up a bit.
Oh, the sound, let's say in my hand, but it's running through my fingers, running straight.
Maybe like that. You can listen the delta. And of course you can bypass this plugin. As I told you in the last video, this bypassing thing is not exactly the same as above here, because it can also bypass grouped plugins. So that's the Lime de-esser. Of course, it features a TCP and MCP stuff. So if I now have this here, you can see the graphics thing where you can drag the key in and key out, and you see the analyzer.
Oh, the sound,
and so on. So that's the de-esser. Let's get to the turquoise limiter, and that is based on limiter 3, of course. So this is an absolute true peak limiting limiter if you enable this feature. If not, it's a regular DBFS limiter, if you want to call it like that. So let's get to another sound example for that. And you see on the top the inputs and on the bottom the outputs. And on the inputs you can drag this limit thing around. So if I put that somewhere here, you see the output will not cross that line. Of course, we have the release And we have input gain and output gain control. So I could move this around and do the settings that I like. Of course, this also has a scope view and the scopes for input, output, and gain reduction scope. And here we can drag the limit. And if you're watching closely, you can see input has a bit another color than the output. So that's about the limiter. And this limiter also features a maximizer. So we can turn on the maximizer and it will compensate what I do with the limiting here. So it will set an output gain so that the limited signal will be at, you would think, 0 dBFS, but no, you can choose from a list the maximizer output. So we could use 0 dBFS, which would be an absolute maximizer, or 0.1 for safety. Most streaming services want to have -1 dBFS at your peaks, so this is for streaming. There are US broadcasting standards for -2 dBFS. German broadcasting ARD is at -10 dBFS, if I'm correct. And people who use analog gear along with a digital gear often tell me that -18 dBFS is referred to be 0 dB on dBu on analog stuff, while the SMTPE considers it at -20. So you can set the compensation gain to whatever you need here. In the maximizer mode, you can enable this listen button, and well, it will turn down the output to 0 dB, so you can just compare what you had before and what it is with the limiting on, but without boosting. Of course, all the new Series 2 plugins also feature the common features, so they have processing on playback, recording on stop, and grouping, and this scaling thing, and quick linking for all visible plugins with control on a Mac or a Windows key on Windows. And of course, it has the TCP for TCP and MCP support for every plugin. So this is now my limiter plugin where I can set the threshold and see my waveform here. Or if I use this in these meters mode, it will change. So we have the meters mode here. And the third new plugin is the Violet Envelope Shaper, which is based on the envelope shaper that we had before. But this time we have time. So we can adjust the attack and the release as we knew it from envelope shapers. But this time we have a, well, if you like to call it a decay time, or a time for the attack. So I think the graphics makes clear what it's about. So if you're boosting the attack, are you just boosting the first milliseconds or the first 60 milliseconds or 30 or whatever you dial in here? So you can have better control over the attack of the envelope. Of course, we have the bypass switch, output switch, and we have the graphics where we can drag around everything. So, well, that would be that. And of course, yes, here we also have these graphics in the TCP or MCP support. So now let's come to that feature that some people asked for, and this is called auto gain, or auto gain control, or auto makeup, or something like that in the plugins. So to explain what it's basically about is when we're recording with a microphone, we're setting an input gain at our interface or mixer where the microphone signal arrives first. And then there are consumer devices, such as you're making a recording with your phone or with an iPad or things like that. So these try to set the input gain for the internal microphone automatically. And this is what is called automatic gain control. And yes, of course, for consumer devices, this makes absolutely sense and works more or less. But when we come to plugins, there's this thing that I wondered, okay, what should it be? And of course, I'm not stupid. I know what answers I will get if I ask people. So I asked people on the internet and some producers I know, some sound guys I know, and even a lot of professionals. And well, that's a topic where you ask 10 people and get 15 answers. So the basic answer is, well, the plugin has a signal that arrives at the input of the plugin, and the automatic gain control makes the output of the plugin as loud as the input. So in a way, it should compensate for what you did with the plugin with the levels. And for showing you what this is about, I set up two of these loudness meter measurement things. This one is at the beginning of the plugin chain, and this one is at the bottom of the plugin chain. So we can see the changes we do in the levels. So if I make no changes at all, both of these plugins are bypassed, we will see we have no changes in levels. So input is output and everything's the same because we didn't change the audio. But if I now unbypass this equalizer, it will boost in the lower frequency range. So we will see that there's a difference in the levels. So that is about, what is it, 5 dB maybe. So now we adjust this boost to compensate in the output trim, about 5 decibels. So that should match better now. Well, it matches better. But that's only about the peak levels. So if we're looking at the loudness, so the impression of how loud it actually is, it is a bit off. So what is it that we want to match? The loudness impression or the levels? And here's another thing that I want to show you. And this is if I take completely different audio with the same settings and play that back.
Oh, the sand that is running through my fingers.
Well, the audio is not affected by this filter because he's not singing so low notes because this is in the bass range and we had a low cut on the microphone recording. So this filter isn't doing anything and we are only using the output trim that we adjusted before. So what we can see is now we are these about 5 decibels off. So same settings, but completely different results. And that, of course, is because we're using completely different audio. So it's not only about the settings in the plugin, it's a combination of the settings in the plugin and the audio that is actually processed by the plugin. In order to get rid of this issue, we would have to analyze the incoming signal and the outgoing signal and match the levels. And that would result in a output trim that would move all the time because we're constantly analyzing. And it has to move all the time because if not, if we would say we need an average, we would need to know all the signal that will come to that plugin before we press play. So in a way, we would have to look into the future endlessly. And of course, that is not possible. So let's say, okay, we have this output trim that moves all the time because we're analyzing the audio and matching the input and the output. Well, that would give us a gain offset over the whole song, and that would make it nearly impossible to mix this stuff. Maybe this feature could be something for voiceover or audiobook or podcast purposes, but that's it. And then there would be another issue. So that was about an equalizer. But imagine we're using a compressor and want to have auto gain here. So what would we do? We could say, okay, we have our singer here, and we have the compressor. So let's see what happens.
Trying to hold the sound, let's say in my hand, but it's running through my fingers.
Well, okay. So as expected, we lowered the overall levels because we are using a compressor that is lowering the higher levels. So we have an offset of, what is it? About 8. About 8 is something we can manually compensate here. And so now we have 8 dB of compensation gain. And we can see what happens if we play it now.
Trying to hold the sound, let's say in my hand, but it's running through my fingers.
That looks about okay. But what we saw during the playback is that these levels didn't match at all. And this is because we have attack and release times. And maybe we can get a step further. So now I'm having another part of the song where he's not singing so loud. So let's see what happens.
Take a look aside.
Wow, that doesn't match at all. Same settings, same vocals, and it doesn't match. And why doesn't it match? Because the compressor is not reducing the volume, because our material is below the threshold. So what do we want to do? We want to adjust the output trim to match the levels again.
Take a look aside.
Well, nice, perfectly matched. 19, everything's fine. So we matched the plugin. Let's play back what we had before.
Trying to hold the sound.
Oh my god, that is not matched at all because we changed the output trim. So in order to match something here, we would have to have this riding output trim, which would make mixing impossible. And not only would it make mixing impossible, a compressor would make no sense because the compressor changes the levels depending on the input signal. So if we're having an output gain that changes the levels depending on the result level, we would have fighting output gain and gain reduction. And if we had that, a compressor would be completely meaningless. So my conclusion for automatic gain and plugins is, well, it can't really exist. Which brings me to my plugin concept. I will not make features that can't exist. We've talked about this on Discord and in forums that we said, well, what is this or that plugin doing, and some kind of magic things and knobs nobody could exactly tell, and I don't want to make plugins like that. And yes, of course, I'm aware that there are plugins that have a knob that is labeled auto gain or auto makeup or something like that. And if you read in the manuals for the plugins, if there are manuals for the plugins, you'll always find something like that this is an estimation of the changes that could be, and the plugin tries to compensate for something. So what they're not doing usually is this riding gain, but they do an estimation on the settings that you dial in the plugin. But what we saw before is that such an estimation is a complete guess, because we saw that you can make changes in your plugin depending on the audio material, where the audio material isn't affected at all or is very heavily affected with the same settings. So that's not auto gain, and that's not an estimation for a gain factor. It's, well, guessing gain. And I don't want to make plugins that do completely blind guesses. So what is it that can be said? Use the output trim on the plugins to do the gain staging that you need to do, that you want to do. And actually, it's only one knob, so use the output trim. That's it for today. Have fun with the plugins, and bye-bye.